Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Cup Reviews, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. I am your host, marketing manager, man who is wearing his Bill Pullman sepia-toned dress shirt, Mackenzie, and I am joined by a fantastic panel today as we talk about the 2019 London Old Vic production of Arthur Miller's All My Sons, starring the incredible Sally Fields and Independence Day actor Bill Pullman. And this is directed by Jeremy Herrin. So joining me, we got some familiar faces, we got some new faces. First off, as a new face on our panel, we have fellow Yorkie and Stratford performer, Emilio. Hello, Emilio.
Hello, Mac. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming aboard. I'm so happy to have you here. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what's your background with All My Sons, what's in your cup today. Give us the rundown on who are you.
Totally. We'll start with what's in my cup. Aptly for this play, I decided on a dark and stormy.
Well done. I get that.
Start the play off right. And so I'm a Toronto-based actor. I've been a professional actor for over a decade. And I was at the Stratford Festival for 3 seasons. In my first season there, I was an understudy for their production in 2016 of All My Sons. And I understudied Frank Luby and Dr. Jim Bayless. When the actor playing Jim Bayless had a concussion from another show, I ended up going on for him for a week.
Wow.
So I think I did it twice or 3 times because it's things being in rep at Stratford. Yeah. I didn't go on a ton, but I'm really glad I had the opportunity when I did, and it was a beautiful production. It's still probably one of my all-time favorite productions I've ever seen, because I did watch it quite a bit while it was running. And the play obviously holds a soft spot in my heart because of that. And it was interesting to watch this production, and it's always interesting to watch productions of plays that you've been in because there are echoes where you're like, oh, everyone sort of figures out the same things. And then there are like wild deviations where you're like, wow, I hadn't actually considered that. So it'd be very interesting to talk through this production today with you all. That's me. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. So you were in the production with Lucy Peacock, correct? Where she played Kate?
That's right. Lucy Peacock, Joe Ziegler, Tim Campbell, and Sarah Affle. Oh my God. It was a stacked cast, stacked group. Yeah.
That was a stacked, wonderful production.
Directed by the Martha Henry.
So see, this is our second Martha Henry. We've talked about her production of Henry VIII that she did with Tim and Irene, and now this is our second. Actually, this will be our third because we also did the Tempest with Martha Henry,
which she acted and didn't direct.
That's right.
Yes. So how exciting! So also joining us as a new face is Grace. Hello, Grace.
Hello.
Welcome aboard. Tell us about who you are, what's your background with this play, what's in your cup.
Yeah, so I was supposed to read this in college. I tried to, and then I didn't really finish it, like we do with a lot of plays in college. Anyway, I'm an actor and a dramaturg based in LA right now, but I usually work in DC theater. So I went to American University and studied theater and public relations there. So sorry to my professors for not finishing this play, but it was great to watch. Learned a lot. It was great. It was a great production. And I have red wine in a cup. This is going to be really dark, but I have red wine in a cup that says Happy Father's Day, and it's made by my brother. So I was like, it kind of goes with the theme of the play, but a little bit, just like a reminder though, this is a play and he did write, the Crucible. So I think it's fine.
The play is about fatherhood.
Okay. Exactly.
Also, Death of a Salesman. I mean, Arthur Miller has a lot of things to say about dads in his plays.
Yep. A lot of daddy issues.
Yes. Watching the end of this, and I was like, yeah, this is basically just like another Death of a Salesman where the dad doesn't make it to the curtain call.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And
I'm also on TikTok. I forgot to say that. But if you want to follow me on TikTok, not Kristen Bell, that's where you can find me.
Love that.
That's funny.
Forgot to plug that.
We get space to plug at the end too, so no worries.
Amazing. Multiple times to plug the socials, but I love that. And then of course, as always, we have our resident dramaturg, the man who co-produces all things The Cup with me, Mr. Ryan Borochovitz. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Mick. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Thank you for coming back. I mean, you were away for Falsettos.
Yeah, and then I was in Angels Part 2 just the week before that. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm around.
So you've only been away for a short moment. I mean, people would have just seen your Copenhagen video that was done.
That went up last week. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Busy times.
So busy.
Exactly. Busy times indeed. So, Ryan, tell us, what is in your cup today?
Well, I have in my sad Ibsen theater cup, because Arthur Miller took a lot of inspiration from good old Ibsen. I have orange pekoe tea. And I enjoy this play very much. I've read it.
Is it your favorite Miller play?
I don't. It's hard to pick a favorite, and I'm sure that'll come up later. But I think this is very strong, and I will say I probably enjoy this one more than Death of the Salesman, and that'll come up later for sure.
I agree with you on that one. I think if I had to rank them, it'd go Crucible, All My Sons, and then Death of a Salesman.
Among others, yeah.
Among others. Those are kind of the three that I would name as my top.
What's in your cup?
Oh, yeah. Well, in my cup today, I have two cups. So my first one here is a cup of Earl Grey tea in my official The Cup cup, because, brand marketing. And then I also have a great Crystal Light drink over here as well in my silver tankard. So when I polish off my tea, I'll have something else to keep myself lubricated as we have a long discussion about this very epic family drama. All right, but let's get into it. So the first question is, which character do we feel is best performed? Emilio, as you have been in a production of this, and now you've watched this production, who stood out to you? Was it the little child?
Sweet little children. It's not the little child. We can have a conversation about the actor who plays Bert and about Bert as a character, because it's so interesting anytime you have children on stage, right? For me, and I don't know if it's my partiality to the part, and to this actor, both as separate entities, and so for them to overlap in this production. But Sally Field's Kate just steals the show for me, and it's because I buy it from her so much, and there is a lot to hold up in the air in this production of what she's going through, how she is like another one of these women who isn't listened to about anything. She's like, I know this thing, and so what's fascinating about this play just in general with a lot of the characters is like, what do people know and when? And so when you're working on it, and as I was in 2016, having only just first encountered the play, the first reading, you immediately go back and you think, if I were to start this again, who knows what and when? And it's like, Anne knows so much right at the beginning. And so does Kate and Joe. They know something which they're hiding from people. And so everybody's just the electricity is constantly going. For me, Sally Field is just, she's absolutely incredible. And one of the standout moments for me is her shaking.
Yes.
And I had forgotten it, but when it started happening, I was like, oh, there's a line. There's one line Joe says to her, look at you shaking. And in our production, like, I don't quite remember Lucy Peacock shaking, but it's like, you don't have to be like shaking. Her voice, I remember having a quiver in it, but to go with such like a strong physical choice there, where it's like, it's actually tearing her apart. Like the way an atom shakes upon splitting, like,
yeah,
she just embodied that in such an incredible way. And then I think it sort of rubbed off on the actor who plays her son, because he shakes at the end as well. So it's just kind of this like vibration throughout the play.
Yeah.
For me, it's got to be Sally Field's Kate. I don't even want to hear. No, I do want to hear. If anybody disagrees with me, but
she was my choice, and she scared me in this production. Like,
cool.
It was her deadpan smile deliveries at times when it was like haunting. It was almost like the dead eye look came over her, and it was like, everything is fine. The facade of suburbia is coming back over me. I will be the wife with the good hair. And it's like, it was just definitely, it actually made me really want to see Sally Field cast as a villain in a movie, just to see what she would do with it, because of how good this was, where it was always just under the surface, just how the unhinged brokenness of Kate with what's ripping her apart inside was always just underneath. Literally, you could almost sense underneath Sally Field's skin, like there was something just inching to break out. And when it does, and when she says, by saying that Larry is dead, is saying your father killed, like I killed his son, and she just literally crumbles. Like, it's scary, and it's, you just want to give her a hug in this moment. Like, but then the next moment of, I've packed your bags, you just have to shut your bags. It's like, oh shit, this is like, this is now a scary, formidable woman again. You can see why she is head of, like, I head in the house. Like, Bill Pullman's guy's head out in the world, but in the house, Sally Field's character is the one that keeps everything moving and keeps this plate spinning. And you can see where her power comes from. It's in that just still, almost deadpan demeanor of her, where it's, I packed your bag, and just shut your bag and go. It's like, I wouldn't want to cross her. There's something truly terrifying about that performance, and just the range she has to go through in that. It was just, the minute I saw Sally Field, I was like, I love Sally Field to begin with. Like,
who doesn't?
Even in Mrs. Doubtfire, she is heartbreakingly wonderful. Or as Mary Todd Lincoln in Lincoln, like, every performance she gives is just a masterclass of a performance. Her Aunt May in those not great Spider-Man movies was,
she was good in those.
she was the best part. I wanted to see more of Aunt May. I could see why they were talking about doing a spin-off movie with her.
With Sally Field as Aunt May? Is that a thing?
It was supposed to be like a Godfather-y, flashbacky, like young Aunt May, old Aunt May.
Setting up the family business. Like,
I guess so. I don't know.
All right, whatever.
But Sally Field was just, I mean, she was a scene stealer in those movies. And you can see why she is, like, she's such a beloved actress in this community of artists. It's because, when she's in a role, she just gives physically and emotionally everything she has to this performance. So Sally Field for me as well. Grace, who was your shout out?
Well, I directed Steel Magnolias when I was in college, so obviously I have to go with my girl Sally Field. She was incredible in this role, and I thought that she brought so much of the ferocity and the she elevated the stakes in every scene that she was in. And I think you can really see that Kate, like, needs Larry to be okay. Like, there's one scene where everybody is coming up to her and they're trying to convince her, like, he's dead. And she's like, no. And she screams it in this way that's so like feral, and like, like she needs to believe that it's real and that it's true. And she does it through so many different angles. And I mean, in Steel Magnolias and in other films and other plays, she's dealt with, the loss of a child and with grief. But it was so interesting to watch this production because the way that she handled that grief was so different from what I've seen before from her. And I think that's really admirable to see in an actor, where they take a role and they're able to make it completely different, even if it shares similarities to roles they've played in the past. So I thought she was the star, like truly just amazing. So
yeah. Ryan,
well, like,
are you going to go for the 4 with also Sally Field?
I'm tempted not to, just because somebody does have to mention Bill Pullman, because I love Sally Field. It was really a toss up between the two of them, and I'm not saying like, oh yeah, Bill Pullman steals the show away from Sally Field. It's the power couple of the two of them together is what really sells it for me. And like, it's literally Mary Todd Lincoln married to President Independence Day. It is like this perfect all-American couple.
There's a crossover movie directed by Michael Bay.
Yeah. Oh God.
Not Spielberg, not Roland Emmerich, Michael Bay. That's what we're going with. Sure.
Yeah, make your case. Make your case. Bill Pullman. Why?
Like, I do think it's something about the two of them together. They do bring this real American authenticity to this otherwise British actors doing American-y voices. Like,
yeah.
And
interesting.
But yeah, okay, I'm getting the sense that perhaps someone's going to bring him up, or some of you will bring him up in the later question. So, well, and
I liked him. Like he was kind of like very American 1950s dad. Like,
and that's exactly.
And his voice, like gravelly kind of baritone, was like, I can see him sitting in the 50s.
Yeah, he does have that real kind of like real 50s square-jawed American family man kind of vibe. He is gruff yet sensitive. I do see all of the layers playing out, and like he goes through the whole ringer over the course of this. I didn't see Joe Ziegler do it. Maybe like if Emilio, if you are comparing him to this like ideal performance in your head, then like, and perhaps a discussion to have later. But no, I think his performance is very strong, and I did not want us to, as much as I did, like, yeah, obviously Sally Field is amazing in this, and I'm not trying to take anything away from her in this. Like, and honestly, I did actually, maybe I'm backtracking here a bit, because the one time I did kind of get teary while watching this was because of Sally Field, and it's not the scene you've already mentioned. It's a scene that I wasn't expecting to make me tear up. Wow, I'm completely 180
Which is
here.
it? Which is the scene now? I want to know.
It's the scene when she comes out, when George has shown up and he's having his conversation with Anne.
She says, Georgie?
Yeah, she comes in and just like sweeps him into this fantasy world that he was so ready to hate. And I kind of started tearing up because I'm like, oh my God, she is so charming and charismatic and manipulative, and she's able to just bring him into this when he has every right to hate her or hate all of them. But
it's so funny.
He's a very calculating character. Like the scene prior, she tells what's the son's name? Not Larry, the other one.
Jim.
Chris.
No, Chris. Jesus.
Chris.
Jim's the
Chris.
doctor.
I think it's in her scene prior where she goes, "People are out to hate us." I think that's the thing that comes before this. So the fact that she comes out and does this very manipulative, Gone with the Wind, the Georgie, like.
And that's the thing. During the scene, you don't quite yet know if it's deliberately conniving. You could just think she's just so happy to see this person from the past. But then there's later scenes when we realize how much she actually is aware of that really do recolor that scene. And because I've read the play before, I had that in my mind watching the scene, which just, tore me apart. Fine, you know what? Yeah, I'll agree with you all. Sally Field,
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like a 180 from you, because even in your description of Bill Pullman, you were saying, well, it's really the both of them together as a power couple.
It is. I think they were. To me,
that sounds a lot more like Sally Field rubbing off.
To me, I thought they
Sally Field rubbing off on a rather lucky Bill Pullman.
I think they made a very great central couple to this production, and I will be curious to hear what people have to say for the later question, if that's where I'm going, because I don't think he did anything wrong in my book.
Oh,
interesting.
Well, like, obviously he killed 21 pilots, but that's not
them's fighting words for me, but we'll get on.
All right, well, in that case, let's get into the next question, which is, what was our favorite production or design element of the piece? Grace, I'll let you start this one.
I thought the lighting and the set design was absolutely amazing. Richard Howell did the lighting design, and then set design was Max Jones. And it was so interesting. Like, I loved how in the beginning, there's this, like, it feels like day, and then at the end of the night, everything kind of goes to just crap. And it was really reflected well in the lighting in the set. But I was wondering, like, what did people think about that first image that we see when we watch the show, and there's that video clip and they're all staring at that video clip? Like, what did all of you take away from that?
See, that's actually what I was going to mention instead of Bill Pullman in the next section. So maybe
gotcha. Okay.
We'll cycle back to that.
Put a pin in that question. But I agree with you about the set. The lighting is on my other list.
Well, there's so much tension on this panel. We all disagree.
I love
but the set, Grace, I agree with you about that. The set, like, as you can see from my back picture here, it's beautiful. Like, it's this beautiful suburban house that they've put on a stage. But what's neat is the detail that there's something festering and peeling and rotting behind this picturesque suburbia 1950s Leave It to Beaver home. Like, even if you look at the table there, like, you can see the paint is peeling off it, right? The cushions on that on that like wicker couch there are like faded and old, and like either time has stopped, or there's just, or like the secrets that this house has been built upon are almost eating the house from the inside. So I liked, and also the fact that we get to see them saw a tree. And the fact that was a tangible bit of set that you actually could do something with was great. I just thought that was such a great bit of set there too. And
then like, sorry to
no, go. I was done.
So the ending of the show, right? Like when I never remember people's names. Was it? I think it's the son, Chris, right?
Yeah,
it's
Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, when Chris is sitting out, he's standing outside of the house, and then Kate goes back into the house with Joe, who's already there, unfortunately. And then the house pushes back and he's just staring at it. I thought that was such an interesting stage image and a great way to kind of end the show, because what happens next? Like, we don't know, but now he has to distance himself from this really traumatic situation that just happened. Like, how do you move past everything that just happened, you know? And I know that Kate says live, but it's like, how do you live after that, right? And that's the question that I think you leave the theater with. And so I thought it was a really interesting way to close the performance.
Yeah. It's still like the house is distancing itself from Chris. You're doing the separation of church and state. The character is literally untethering from the house. But can he really be untethered? That is the million-dollar question. I don't know if after walking in on your dad who shot himself, if you ever can fully escape that house.
Absolutely not.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very traumatic.
Yes. Emilio, what is your thought?
Well, this conversation has piqued me. I want to go off of what Grace has already said, like about about the set, the space. You've said a lot too, Mac, about where we are, how we live in this, like, you know, proscenium, and still allow people to come into the proscenium and go, like, there's depth in this set. When we did it at Stratford, it was on the Tom Patterson, which is a very long, deep thrust.
Yeah.
So you could have like the arbor, the gazebo in one corner, and the entrance to the house in another. And in the middle was all of this playing space of like, the table and chairs and the tree. So I have to toot our horn. It's not even me. It's that you know, the incredible designers of that production. We started our production with Kate coming outside in the night to watch the tree fall. And the tree is struck by lightning and it falls. So we had a mechanism by which this tree stood for the whole pre-show. It fell, and it actually needed to be, cut at the top of Act 2. So all of that tangibility, I think, is super useful for this play. And again, particularly for people who don't know what's coming in Act 2. For Act 2 to start with Chris just being like, and we're cutting the tree. That's it. We're gonna cut the tree down because I don't know why we just left it there. Is so like, we've learned so much about it. It means so much. And then all of a sudden it's ripped like from us. And we don't ever speak about it again. And yet it's this stump. It's this dead stump that
it's Larry. It's literally
the whole time. And it is the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
So I really, I really did enjoy that. For me, it's stuff like the grass, like just being able to achieve that, being able to achieve this like tangible sense of where we are. I noticed it particularly in the scene where Annie's asking Chris to sit down so they can chat, and she was kind of rifling through it with her fingers. And I was sort of taken by that for a moment, because I'm like, wow, like you're really there too. Like you're having this kind of nervous discussion and you're playing with the grass. Like how cool is that? So set did it for me. Not so much lighting. And I'm sorry, Grace, but you started asking a little bit about the beginning with sort of the projection and the projection leading into the house. Like, how did you feel about that? Did you enjoy that? Was that meaningful?
I thought it was interesting. I didn't really understand why it was there. And I sort of felt like it took me out of, it was interesting, right? Because it's a very realistic play. There's not really anything very, magical or surrealist about it. And that moment felt so out of the world of Arthur Miller. So I was instantly intrigued as somebody who is not always the biggest fan of Arthur Miller, but it wasn't really something that they incorporated into the rest of the show. Yeah. So I sort of watched it again and I was like, what does this mean? Like, I want to understand, but I didn't really fully connect to that moment in the show.
I have thoughts on it. I mean, like, there's
want
ways
to
I've
skip
read it.
ahead to that now.
Well,
No,
I
let's
mean,
not skip ahead because I know, Ryan, you're going to bring it up in the next section. But first, let's see what your favorite design element was, and then we'll let you.
Mine is actually, because I'm agreeing with a lot of you, it was the set and the costumes together. They were both designed by Max Jones, and I think there is like this very cohesive aesthetic vision going on between them. And yeah, it's basically the same thing you already said, Mac. It has this like Norman Rockwell, but peeling at the seams. And yeah, I don't feel like very eloquently said, all of you, and nothing more to really add. Let's talk about things we didn't like.
All right, Ryan, you can start because I know you're like,
well, I know, just since we're already on this.
Welcome to the next hour and a half when we talk about the things we didn't like.
Yeah, so Grace, since you brought up my pick for the weakest element of the production, to me was that choice of the projection as our entranceway into the show. And it's not because like I'm like, this is such a realist play, why would you integrate projection into this? It's why would you just do it once at the very beginning and never bring it back? That was my
I
thing.
think
like,
there's a reason.
Okay.
I think, well, for me, I read that because I watched this production twice. Once when you and I are going to write the questions, and then today just to get myself refreshed on it. But when I watched it the second time, it clued into me that there's so much talk about the neighborhood and the surrounding space of this house and the history of the kids growing up there, that everybody comes in and watches the old family video, and then the next thing is you cut to the house, and then it's the story.
Is that what that was, though?
That's what I took it as, because it's kids, right? Like, you see the kid riding on the tricycle in the streets, the kids playing. It's almost like Kate's home movies that she took of the neighborhood when Larry and Chris and Anne and Laffy Girl, that and Georgie, like, it's almost like Kate's home movies that almost play in her head throughout the entire show, that she's living in this yesterworld of what this neighborhood was. And there's so much talk about this piece of Georgie, move back, we'll find you a good girl, you can move back in the neighborhood, or Anne, get your dad Steve to move back and we'll get into this neighborhood. Like, there's so much heavy talk about the neighborhood. So the video clips are almost a way to show the neighborhood.
Like
that's what I took it as. And then also to set up the world of the 40s and the 50s, right? Like, the minute I saw that video clip, I was like, I know the time and place.
The minute you see the set, you know what time and place it is. I don't think it's necessary for that function. Yeah, like, to me, I think, like, sure, that's a valid interpretation. I'm not saying it's not that. I just think there still could have or should have been more done with it to justify, like, to justify hiring an IATSE unionizer or whatever it is in the UK. Like, an artist had to make that. Think about that for a second. For less than 30 seconds of stage time, and then it never comes up again. They hired a projection designer. Like Matt, sure, you're right. It is about the neighborhood and the community, but we see the neighborhood and the community in the show. All the neighbors come onto the stage and they talk about, I don't think we need this whole extra production element to bring that in. I can kind of get behind that this is Kate's home movies that she keeps coming back to in her head, but then I want us to keep coming back to them. They could have paused multiple times for her to, like, wistfully maybe go back into memory lane. That would have been a very interesting, heavily production design sort of infused projection sequence.
It would have been good to have Act 2 open with the video playing and having Chris sawing the tree. So it's almost like the chopping.
At least bring it back once, like after intermission, sure. But like,
I agree.
It reminds me when like several months or however long ago back when we reviewed Pipeline and the projections in that one, that like, that was my shout out as the best thing, because they really kept bringing it back and kept showing different escalations of violence in inner city schools through that device, and that was thematically brought the whole play together, in my opinion, and this did not do that. So
I wonder if, like, because what you were saying about it being the home videos, right? And those constantly playing in her head. I'm wondering if maybe there's this tie to home and, like, every character feels it, right? Because we see with George later, like, this idea of moving back home and being with, what's her name? Laffy, like, being with her, that idea was really, like, enchanting to him. But their reaction to that film was very, it definitely sat with me as an audience member, because, like, looking at it, you could tell it wasn't like a happy reflection. It something they were noticing, and then they had to be pulled out of that moment. And so I think in some ways it's interesting because there are so many images in this play where it's like, you know, something happens and it can't be reversed and it only happens once and then you can't go back to the time before that. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe that was what they were trying to convey. I'm not sure, but
just do more of it. Like, I don't think we can even, there's not enough of it that I think we can make a meaningful interpretation of it. And I think that's a problem.
For me, the fact that it's a one and done is sort of in antithesis to something Grace said earlier. Like, it is the framing of, this is a story. You are about to enter a play. Like, you're about to enter a tale, and it's not necessarily real. It will have very realistic elements, and there will be a really heartbreaking story at the center of this. But setting the scene as like you're about to watch a story unfold. For me, it's not that it was like, you know, deeply moving, or I found it made much sense, or, you know, whatever. Like, it could have just as easily not been there, and we could have just opened with, you know, sitting out there with the newspaper, drinking your coffee, like the way people sort of walk into their backyards, and we're kind of watching. But the fact that it's through a screen gave me a little bit of like post-war feeling, you know, like this is an era where now we're finally starting to get the news by watching TV rather than just reading. So things are a little
radio,
bit, you know, breaking news. We're getting through, or radio, right? Breaking news. This is happening right now. And so for me, it was a little bit of like, let me take you into what is a little bit of a staged arena. Like this neighborhood is the all-American neighborhood, but there's something very wrong here. And so I don't know, like maybe I'm reading too much into it, and I'm trying to be devil's advocate for everyone who disliked it. But at the same time, it really did give me the sensation that we were diving into a story. A story will be told here.
See, it's interesting because to me, I feel like whether intentional or not, I think it had the opposite effect because it's framed like home movies. Like, it has this kind of Barnesian reality effect to it. Like, it's not stagey to me. It wasn't trying to be stagey.
Right. But okay, so the image for me quite literally is like a TV turns on, static, and we see some images, and then we see like flipping of channels, right? Like, we sort of see a couple images, and they're not necessarily congruous. Like, we're not watching an episode of I Love Lucy. And then the screen pulls away to reveal the real house. So it had the effect of, like, I guess if it were a cinematic device, we would be watching a kid sitting this far away from the TV, flipping through the channels, and then arriving at this house. And then we go through that wall of the house, and all of a sudden we're into the land.
Yeah.
So that was what it was for me. I think setting up a bit of fiction, but with like an element of look at how picturesque this thing is. Things are rotting inside. Yeah. It might be a bit hollow, might be a bit unexpected, or like, because it's
video
television, it might anything can happen instead of mediocrity will only happen, right?
Yeah. And I mean, like, even the video looks like it's the played up for the camera, like, smile, Bobby, like, smile and wave for the camera, look extra cute. Like, meanwhile, in reality, right before the camera turned on, Mom was yelling at Bobby to, like, fix his shirt, right? And it's that split second of reality, but then it's like, oh, wow, all right, the camera's on. This is a memory that's being recorded. Smile, right? So there's, right, once again, it's that something's rotten in the state of Denmark, but you don't know what's rotting yet, right? So very interesting. Emily, what was your shout out for weakest production or design element?
Oh,
you can say it. It's fine.
Was it Bill Pullman?
I think it's Bill Pullman.
I'm curious to hear why.
Why?
I thought he was good. Like, I don't know. Try to convince me.
So why? I don't have to do that.
We can disagree.
I'm gonna say how I feel about it, and we can disagree till the cows come home. That's totally fine.
That's the joy of this show.
I was gonna say, like, is it all of the British actors who are trying to give me New York a little too hard? Which I just hate.
That was almost my pick, but I dislike the screen just a little more.
And as a generalization, a lot of British actors are really damn good at American accents.
They were very good
because of the level of work you can get when you're like, capable of that kind of chameleon
Yeah.
voice work. But I didn't look up any of the actors before, and I didn't look up any of them after, but I can tell that a few of them slipped on me, and I'm like, it just takes me out. It's an Americana drama. I understand you're at the Old Vic, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that gets like my honorable mention maybe for like weak element.
Mine too.
Because I don't know. And I guess this is the other thing is like none of the actors truly, God, I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm like, I'm living at home. I'm not working. I'm an actor, and I'm shitting on Bill Pullman and the fucking cast of this thing. But okay, so here's why Bill Pullman was a problem for me is because I actually didn't see vulnerability, and I didn't see stakes. Sometimes I saw like that things kind of just happened, and he just kind of got away with them happening, and I don't
Almost
know if
like Joe Keller does.
Yes, but that's so I had to keep asking myself, I'm like, okay, maybe, but I want to see him be less good at hiding all the stuff, particularly as more and more of it comes in. And so there has to be moments where at least the audience sees the veneer crack. Yeah. And I find this is a thing that can happen with actors who primarily do film, going to the theater. I don't know if Bill Pullman's doing a lot of theater all the time, but I'm not getting the level of wear it a little louder than you think you should.
He's used to a close-up. A close-up can say a lot.
But also, like, this is filmed quite cinematically in those moments. And it's not until the tail end where he's, like, snotty crying that you're like, oh, he has an emotional well. And at the same time, by then, I was like, I don't feel like we've earned that. And for me, the part is, like, so designed to show those switches more intensely. Like I need to see that he doesn't understand his son. When he says like, I don't understand you, do I? No, I'm a pretty tough guy. Yeah, I can see that. And because that, like, the sort of like almost the threatening of the violence at that moment, jokingly, comes back later when they're chasing each other around the sheds outside, like, I'm going to tear you apart, I'm going to kill you. And for me, it was just kind of like, seemed like he was neither here nor there on how it all came out, or the stakes weren't really that high. And I think that that's a Bill Pullman thing. Like, I think that was just another actor in that part might have found more opportunity. And yes, I do have Joe Ziegler in my head, and Joe Ziegler was absolutely fantastic, electric, and truly rode the line between, like, I'm the 50s man who kind of, gets away with whatever I want. And I'm going to tell the story about how I came home and I was waving on the street because I was the exonerated guy. And him telling that story while, those of us who know the play know what's really happening underneath that, how he's managed to support that, like, that nuance is all held. With Bill, I was like, do you want to be here a little bit? Like, do you want to be here? And so it pulls me out. But I did feel that a little bit with Chris as well. Again, like, we ended up with these incredible emotional performances by the third act that I felt in many cases had not been earned throughout the course of the first and second acts.
It needs to be more build.
That's just a nuance thing, maybe, that I'm like, but
I agree with you.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Challenging for me.
I agree. I
mean,
mean,
Chris, like George too. Sorry, to keep rambling, but George has a hard arc, and to come in with like, I am here to fucking wreck I don't know. We're swearing on this program. Too late.
You get one. It's a PG-13 show.
Okay. So he comes in. He's fudging Matt, and he's like, gonna make some stuff happen, and then gets swept up, and that's a beautiful thing. And then there's another place to dip from there. So that arc was like pretty nuanced and beautiful by that actor. Everyone else gets a 3-act arc, and I didn't feel that they were well taken care of. And I really, really loved what Sally Field did, and I still think there were opportunities that she missed. Actually, that's my maybe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Also, please, Sally, if you're listening, please wants to work with me someday, because I adore you. And maybe I just need to let go the production that was so moving for me. That I was.
That can be hard to do.
It's very hard.
It can be very hard to do. And I mean, it's funny, like you talking about the arcs, it reminds me of in our last review we did, which was Falsettos. Mark Bellamy came on, and as a director, he has this great kind of analogy of when you're acting, you should always be like a boiling pot of water. And if you keep the lid on too tight, the audience will never know what's going on underneath the hood of the pot. Mm-hmm. You gotta let the audience see some of the steam and the bubbles coming off the pot just so they can track the boiling water, basically. And with Pullman in particular, I mean, part of me why I just couldn't get Independence Day out of my head. I was waiting. I was like waiting for him to do the Independence Day is everybody's day like speech again, right? Yay! But like, yeah, right, exactly. So there's part of that, but like I agree. Like by the time we got to third act, there was a lot of big emotional swinging that was going on. That I was like, really, only Sally Fields earned that.
Yeah.
Breakdown in my eyes. Everybody else has kind of been playing the picturesque facade too much without letting the cracks of that facade show throughout. So we get that when we finally do get the world breaking open in Act 3, everybody gets to be like Sally Field and have this big snot fest.
And you know what has occurred to me now? It's like in Act 2, I believe it is. Oh, maybe it's Act 1. Can't remember. And I know this play. But there were moments where I was like, oh, particularly with the younger actors, these moments of playing for the effect of the thing rather than the intention of the thing, where I was like just kind of confused about what's actually motivating these people. So there is, and it's brilliant Arthur Miller writing, Annie responding to Kate all the time in that one chunk with no Kate. Like, I don't think of him. You never think of him. No Kate. No Kate. No Kate. Yeah. And what I got a little bit from that actor in that moment was, no, Kate. No, Kate. And I'm like, why are you singing it? Why are you singing it right now? Like, I'm not buying it. And actually, Sally Field's giving you a lot. She's like, you never think of him? No, Kate. And I'm out. Well, I'm gone. I'm like, arrive, just be there. I see you, it's okay. Like, are you afraid that the camera's there and you're recording this one? How far into the run are you recording it? I don't know. Yeah. I was disillusioned by a lot of that. And that's hard for me. But I am precious about this play. Take it all with a grain of salt. Yeah. Please still hire me, Sally Field.
Grace, what was your shout out for weakest element?
Well, I actually agree with Emilio. I think that I wasn't really that entranced by Beau Pullman. I felt like I wanted to see more variation in his tactics, and like it was just kind of a flat in some points of the performance. It was a little flat, and I just felt like, Sally Field, she's giving you so much right now, and I know that there is this image of what an Arthur Miller character, especially the lead male character, is supposed to look like, and I felt like almost like he was haunted by that image of what it's supposed to look like rather than actually performing it truthfully. Like whenever I think about like Arthur Miller plays, I always think of like Jeff Daniels and like the way that he acts on stage, and how it's very natural and like, right? Like he would be amazing. And I wanted to see more of that, like of his natural reaction to things rather than just seeing this performance. And I felt like with so many of them, and it's interesting because Arthur Miller is such an American playwright, like he really did start like, this whole movement in American theater. And I've never really felt this way about his work before, but like watching it at the National and seeing their production, I realized how special it is to see Americans take on these characters, because there is this knowledge in some ways, right? When they're communicating with each other that like, it's just so different, like there were moments where I felt like the characters were just sort of performing Americanness rather than just like living authentically. And there's really no, like these characters they don't feel like a performance to me. They feel like they're supposed to be there and just present with each other, and that they're very trusting with each other. So it was interesting to see, especially like with Anne, for example, like there were moments where she's a great actress, but there were moments where I just felt like you're performing this idea of like what you think an American ingenue is supposed to look like. But this character is really complex and you don't have to perform as much in certain points. Like, yes, she knows a lot of stuff that the rest of the group doesn't know yet, but it was just interesting to see the way that she adapted to that character. And I sort of wanted to see more of an authentic relationship between all of them, because I think that's what makes the ending of the play so tragic. You just see this family that used to be so comfortable with each other look around and realize, oh my God, like we don't even know each other. Like, what are we all really hiding? And so that was sort of the heartbreaking thing for me. And I wanted to see more from Bill. I did. I mean, if you're going to play the lead, you know, and you're going to be working with Sally Field, like you better step it up.
I have like a little bit of just like, this is directed to Ryan. Bill has in him the natural gruff, natural like deadbeat dad, boomer dad thing. Like he's got that
greatest generation. His son is a boomer.
Yes,
or actually, not even his son is great. His son is greatest generation because that's the generation.
That's true. Post-war, yeah.
Wow, this is like super pre-boomer.
Yeah, he's silent, right? No, pre-silent.
Whatever.
Anyway.
Generations get wonky after a certain point.
Yeah. What I mean is, for our context, he has that. Like we know that man, and he's got a lot of that man as a given circumstance for who he truly is. Like. Got a gruff voice, kind of a I don't have to care about things, a little bit of a macho
jaw
way that he moves. Yeah. What Joe also must have for me to be successful is this, like, the statesman who knows how to play his audience. And I didn't quite get that from Bill in moments where, you know, he needs to be constantly reading the temperature of how close he is to being completely exposed.
Yeah.
And then he needs to take control of it in the same way that Kate, you know, does her hair and is ready to like pop champagne and let's have a barbecue. They've been using those skills as the beloved couple on the block for forever. And what I saw was an actor, or I guess an actor portraying a character who's not as good at it as I think he would have to be to go through the process of exoneration. And still be as loved as he is. He's got to have a Frank Sinatra thing about him.
He's got to be a politician. He has to be someone who can read the room and know how to
And he says he's dumb. He says like, oh, you know, like it's getting so that only the dumb ones are the bosses. Like he acknowledges that, but his street smarts have to come through in a really like vicious and tactile and precise way. And I didn't feel the precision in Bill's performance in places where I wished there was a little bit more. So I will afford him that he's got a lot of the given circumstances, you know, an actor can benefit from when this is the role. But I missed some of the colors that absolutely need to be there.
Yeah. I mean,
R.I.P. Bill. We're just like, this is like tomatoes.
Love doing Spaceballs.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I mean, Bill Pullman was not my weakest element, but I do agree with everything that's been said. Mine was the lighting design, because I get it was a natural light where it's like the slow fade into night, but it was so boring. Like it was like there was nothing.
It wasn't showy. Like
exactly.
But it's an Arthur Miller play. Like there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, but even when we watched like Brian Dennehy's production of Death of a Salesman, they were able to do some really neat lighting tricks to show change of time, passage of time, just double scenes going on.
Yeah, like, this one has more unity of time and place than correct. So we don't really like Death of a Salesman.
It was there. I mean, it wasn't awful. It didn't. I was just watching it. I was like, "What's the weakest element?" I was like, "Lighting's there. It's nice. It's there. It's not. I guess nothing to go home and go, oh my god, I just saw Sally Field and All My Sons." But you know what really got me? The lighting design.
But you know, there were moments where they stood in darkness. There were moments where people were caught in patches of shadow, and I was like, that's unfortunate because, you've maybe paid $200 to go sit and watch this production and you can't see Sally Field. That's a shame. That shouldn't be. It's tough.
Yeah, Bill Pullman, you don't see him, that's fine. Sally Field, you miss her.
What I will say about the lights, though, is like, Mac, you are absolutely right. It's not showy. No one's going to say, I saw the Sally Field play and the lighting was amazing, but you don't go to a Sally Field play for the lighting. You go for Sally Field or for Arthur Miller or for Bill Pullman. You don't. So I don't think it's a big problem that the light is exactly what its role in this production is.
It's just like, it was just like when I'm ranking like what do I think production wise didn't hit the mark when it like compared to the sets and costumes, which were fantastic, perfectly captured the time and place. Lighting, I was like, I get what they were going for. It's a natural day to night lightscape, and not much you got to do there. Like it's nothing flashy. It's just there. It's nice. It's okay. It's not fantastical. It's just okay. And for me, I was like, if it's just okay, then that's for me. Meh. I don't know much more. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like even like a day to night thing, you could still have some fun with shadows and the lights in the house, and like and the lights from the neighbor's house is shining into that backyard. Like like even in the nighttime, there are still some fun lighting tricks you can do to make that space more dynamic. I mean, play with the shadows, work with the director, and have it so when somebody says something that isn't truthful, maybe do have them in a bit of a darker light, or have them go somewhere that maybe their facades are a little bit more shadowed. I don't know. Talk to your director. Just because it's a natural doesn't mean you can't still work with your director and give something that goes with that helps emphasize a moment or a character. Just thing, right? Like there's natural is great, but even like this is a stage. You can still play with something, but they went natural. It's nothing bad. It's just okay. It did its job. It allowed me to see Sally Field in her rocking chair.
Well, I think it's interesting because like when we look at different playwrights, right? Like when I think of Arthur Miller, that's the kind of lighting I would expect, just because he was like this very based in realism. And I think there are so many amazing productions that really do embellish a lot of the fantastical elements of like what you can do with that play. But I think maybe it was the first moment in the play, right? Like when we see that video and that footage, you expect maybe the lighting will be a little bit more interesting, or maybe they'll do something a little bit more interesting, especially since the set is so, extraordinary as well.
Yeah.
So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Like to my comment earlier about disliking the projection, if it had been a multimedia All My Sons, I would have been here for it if they did interesting things with that, and the lighting could have been integrated into that too. But I
mean, they could have done something interesting with that. I mean, I think back to, funny enough, Billy Crystal when he did his one-man play, 500 Sundays. His set was similar house, but within the house was all these screens that then projected images and video clips of his family as he talked about his dad. So, I mean, I think you could have done something interesting where you project some of the home videos on the house, almost like
have a silhouette of Larry's ghost lurking around the house.
Maybe,
dancing,
I don't know, but you could play with that. I mean, you could play with Larry's silhouette showing up in Kate.
That's what the tree's for. We don't need it. I was being facetious.
I think Ryan, you actually hit on something neat. That
I don't know. I feel like that would be campy, like just.
Well, you have to do it right. You have to execute it properly. I think you could do something with the shadows and Kate living in this shadowy world that she sees things that maybe others don't. I don't know. Play with it. I think there's enough in this play, and the fact that there are these unseen figures and characters that have a big pull, that maybe you could do something interesting there. But that's neither here nor there. That wasn't this production. They went with this lighting choice. It was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. All right. So now let's decide. Do we want to recommend this? Because this is a new release on a relatively new streaming platform, National Theatre Live. So would this be the one if you were saying, hey, you got to go subscribe to National Theatre and this is the production you got to watch on it? Is this how you do it? Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I wouldn't tell anyone to sign up for NT at Home just to watch this. But if they're signed up anyway, I would tell them to watch this, because I thought it was a very strong production. I did like both of our leads, even if that's perhaps a minority opinion.
No.
But I thought it was strong. See, Mac, you're throwing wrenches at me, because the way you usually pose this question to me specifically is, would I show this to students, like in the classes ITA?
Well, you could do that too, but I mean, you keep pointing out to me that as the TA, you don't decide what the material is.
So I'll answer. So
I'm learning from your comments.
Hypothetically, let's say I'm the prof of this course. This is like 10 years from now, when I might be employable. I would, and this is kind of what I was sort of hinting at earlier when we were talking about our histories with this play, and you asked if it's my favorite, however you phrase that. I would probably put All My Sons on a syllabus over Death of a Salesman, and depending on what function it's going to serve on the syllabus, over The Crucible too. Like, and this is a thing, like when you're designing a syllabus for like an introductory, just dramatic literature or theater history course, you have to weigh like what's interesting things I can expose the students to versus what are the things they're expected to know as good citizens of the theater ecosystem. So you feel like, oh, I got to show the Death of a Salesman or the Crucible because they will be expected to know that. And if they haven't encountered it already, there is this like, wow, you know, they're going to go out into the world and people are like, what, you've never seen or read Death of a Salesman? How do you call yourself a theater person? And they're like, I don't know, I'm a fraud. My prof never told me. But I think this is to me, I was shocked the first time I read this, that this was written before Death of a Salesman. Because to me, this seems like the better version of that same story. Or the more interesting, higher stakes. People have died. Like the 21 pilots are dead because of our protagonist's actions, as opposed to Death of a Salesman, where it's all about his just like his pride, his own sense of himself, and everything is riding on that. And this just feels like such a bigger, more intense, more exciting, more tragic story. And yeah, I think more like, I agree that to be that better citizen of the theater world, you're expected to know those other later Miller plays, but I think more people should know this one. This should be the one that many people should be exposed to. And I think this production is that good introduction to it. And it's only if you have better versions of previous productions scrolling in your head that you might be less enthused about this one. Not talking about anyone in particular.
Not smart across Emilio's bow there, Ryan.
I'm just saying, I think this is strong. And Mac, you often say like, you know, your folks aren't theater people, and you're like, well, would I recommend it to them? This is one that I could totally see recommending to my folks who don't see a lot of theater. I think this is just like this. Yeah, feels like a real dad play that I think my dad
Happy
might actually.
Father's Day.
Well,
I feel like that's every Arthur Miller play. Just recommend them to your dad.
Yeah, but I feel like there is like, this is a good introduction to Arthur Miller, to theater, to American theater from, you know, this early post-war period. And I would, yeah, if I was assigning this play on a syllabus, this is a production that I think is a helpful visual aid to just give the students the taste of it.
Awesome. Grace, would you be wanting friends to sign up for National Theater at home to watch this production, or is this one that maybe you wouldn't recommend?
Well, it is against my moral code to recommend Arthur Miller to anyone. I don't want to subject my friends to that. But I did like this production. I did think it was particularly interesting to watch. And I think if I was like, I've also been a TA, and I think that if I was ever gonna, you know, recommend a show to my students, I would like recommend them to watch this rather than read it, because I hated reading it, but watching it was a lot more entertaining. But yeah, I would probably put like John Proctor as the villain before, you know, watching this, just because, you know, sometimes I feel like with Arthur Miller, you know, you see what, you know, you sort of expect from him a lot of the time. And I think that he has some really great characters, but for me personally in theater, I just don't think that like great character work is enough to create a great story. I think you need to actually like challenge more than just like having complex characters on stage. Like there needs to be something more that you're doing. So I think that if you want to learn how to be a great actor, right, like watch Sally Field's performance in this. It's absolutely incredible. But as for this like total production, I wouldn't say sign up for like National Theater Live for this. Like I would say sign up for, you know, like their production of Three Sisters or like, you know, Angels in America. But yeah, I mean, I think it's good. I think you should watch it because, you know, people will probably say like really stupid things to you about how you need to know Arthur Miller when like really it's fine. So for that sake, yeah, watch it.
Emilio.
Yeah, I feel like
unfortunately, the Stratford show was not filmed, so we don't have a video.
Well, it was
filmed
for
the archives.
Yeah,
they're not releasing it out to the public.
They're in the archives. That's right, and I'm actually not sure about how, like, what kind of credentials you need to be able to get into that archive to see them. Yeah, don't sign up for NT if you don't have the $10 a month or whatever. Like times is tough. I hear that. That's all good. I think, you know, this production, I had a love-hate relationship watching it. I think that this play should be encountered, and I think, reading it is maybe a tough way to go about that, but reading it in a group where everybody's got a part to read it out loud is moving. I think just the people who don't know this play, to encounter the twists and the ways in which the information unfolds in this play is like, I think even just for that hit of adrenaline is worth it. And I encourage people to look at its language and feel the sort of archaic nature of the language at this time, and see it for opportunities, to go like, how do I say the line, what must I do to you? What must I do to you when I'm ready to, rip you open? That's a challenge. That is a classic challenge for the actor. It's like, I feel like I just want to scream or I want to leave, and I can't. I have to stay and say these things that are here. And this play has a lot of that, where like, oh my God, Kate's whole like, no one does take her faith away. That line, like, it's a hard line. So I think it has merit. It has merit in performance. I understand that, it's I'm by no means like an Arthur Miller Puritan, but
all the characters in the Crucible.
But I do recommend encountering this play, and if that is through watching production, please do. If that is through finding out how to watch the Stratford production, please do.
I will say for me, watch it. I mean, as Ryan says, watch all theater. It never hurts to watch a bit of theater in your life. What I really liked about this production was the pacing. I remember when we watched the Brian Dennehy Death of a Salesman. While Dennehy was great, that production was nearly 3 hours. And I remember sitting there watching it, and towards the end, I was like, is he dead yet? Like, love you, Brian. R.I.P. But it's like,
that's sad. Actual Brian Dennehy is dead.
Yes, I'm like, come on, Willie, like, let's move this along. Get in the car, come on. Like, but this was like,
Willie, get in the car.
I strongly believe like a show has to be 90 minutes or less. So this was very long for me. But I do respect your opinion.
Yeah. I mean, all Arthur Miller's long. The Crucible is long. But I mean, like, if you pace it right and you get the right energy to give you the peaks and the valleys, you shouldn't feel the time going by. This didn't feel the time going by because, as Amelia says, there are so many discoveries and twists and turns and new twists of the knife into different characters that you're like, oh shit, Georgie's now showing up. Oh wow, Georgie's buying into the facade. Oh no, Kate just let slip about Joe not being sick. And then she doubles back. Oh shoot. Like, everything just keeps snowballing in the story. I mean, even the scene, which we'll get to in a bit, between Sue and Anne has some great stakes in it that you can really kind of get interested in. So yeah, the pacing of this, like, a little over 2 hours. And I was like, maybe we could have trimmed a bit or done something a little bit fast, but overall it's a good pace. So I would say for Sally Field alone, tune in and watch it. Bill Pullman, take him or leave him. Like,
that is a beautiful button on that answer.
Anywho, either way, tune in, give it a watch. All right, let's now dive into some more Arthur Miller text-based questions. And Grace, I'll let you start this first question, which is it right/moral/ethical for Chris and Anne to be together?
That's a good question. I'm a dramaturg, so I never like to answer anything, but I feel like I can understand. In the beginning, I really struggled to understand like why he would ever do that to his brother. And I also thought Bill, not to go against Bill again, I'm so sorry, but like his reaction to that, like he was like, oh, you're getting married. Okay. I was like, what? Like, this is huge. Like, this is such a what kind of moment, like I was shocked, like, cause that's just terrible. And I completely forgot that part of the play. But then when I watched it, I was like, oh, right, this happens. But I think that as the play goes on, you start to understand why they have these feelings for each other, and you understand Chris's side of it. But then I also think with Anne, it's like she's trying in some ways to replace like her relationship with Larry. because there's that moment where she kisses him and she's like, oh, it was like kissing your brother. And I was like, that's weird. And they never really like resolved that moment. And so it just sort of hangs, you know, and then, and then later on, like Anne knows all this stuff and kept it from Chris. And I'm like, this is not the kind of relationship that you want to be in, you know? And so it's so messy. And I mean, I wouldn't want to be on that involved in that relationship. And I think because it starts from such a questionable moral place, right? It ends in the same sort of way that you would expect, where it's kind of just a complete horrible thing at the end, you know?
Amelia?
So that's how I felt.
Yeah, I mean, morality, ethics, whatever. If they love each other, they should be together. I do think, I'm with Grace on this. Like, she holds a lot from him. Like, she's hiding a lot from everyone. And then she says, and then she says that that's why she could fall fully in love with him, is because she knew she could let Larry go, which is like a whole other trip, because she holds this letter presumably in her bra the whole show. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if it's right there as this literal burning thing, I wonder a lot. But I go, this is a time where people don't, they don't divulge their feelings. People hide everything from one another because they think let's just bury it and move on. We don't have to talk about it. Like, in some parallels, coming out of the Second World War and coming out of the Depression, coming out of this pandemic, there will be a movement to like, and I'm going to take all of the trauma I have experienced and throw it over there because it wasn't really real. It didn't really happen to me. I'm okay. Look at how well I'm doing. So yeah, should they be together? I don't know. Can they can they overcome this like deeply traumatic thing that happens? And that's prior to the suicide that ends this play. At that moment, I don't know that they will be together. I don't think they can be, because I think everyone's just way too broken. And in a weird way, it feels like, this is tangential now, but in a weird way, it feels like Kate is more solid at the end than ever, because she has all of the closure she needs to know exactly what happened and that it was his fault. And like, and for some reason, it feels like a freeing.
Her greatest fear has been confirmed, and that's
so
what
she
else needed to move
there?
on.
Right. And she says, I'll kill myself. She says that. And he says, oh, you're crazy. And she goes, laugh at me, but I'll kill myself. And she doesn't yet. We'll see. But I think it's funny, by the end, it'd be interesting to see if Kate would understand the two of them wanting to be together after all of that. Like, because it feels like, just hold near to somebody who can give you love at this time, because all of the mess is still messy. But like, oh God, she then finds out that her father is not at fault. I don't know that she can be in that family anymore after finding that out.
Ryan? I see you
like
nodding and smirking.
Well, because like, honestly, I had such a hard time answering this question when I was like prepping some notes like before we started recording. And I'm like, how do you even begin to unpack this? Like, and the way that I tried to get a bit of a foothold in it is I took it character by character. So just starting with Anne, I thought from her perspective, I think it's weird that she's willing to enter this romantic relationship with the brother of her, deceased betrothed, but because she knows that he is dead, she's the only one until the very end who knows it with 100% certainty. I could understand that she's gone through her grieving process. She's confronted what she needs to, so she's almost in the most sober state of mind to make this decision. When we go to Chris, things start to get a little iffy, because Chris doesn't know that Larry cannot come back. He is making this decision to symbolically be like, we've waited, it's not going to happen, I'm okay with doing this. still knowing in the back of the head that maybe he will come back, and that'll be one awkward Thanksgiving dinner when I'm married to his fiance. And to me, I see Chris, his relationship to the uncertain state of Larry's well-being. I don't think he necessarily thinks, yeah, it's been long enough, he's not coming back, so it's okay that I do this. I think he's convinced himself that Larry can't come back so he can get the thing he's wanted all along, and that is a romantic relationship with Anna. And so to me, that feels like very unhealthy. He does open up about his like PTSD and survivor's guilt in the war, which I think is really interesting. Like that he frames like the company of men that he lost and how he feels personally responsible because he survived. And I'm like, how do you not see that as thematically echoing with what you're doing right now with your brother's gone and you've survived? And do you not feel the same guilt there? Like you're willing to sort of just push him under the rug. So I don't know what to do with Chris. Like he's really, but then also with the whole family dynamic that, Chris, know that's symbolically what this means to Kate if you marry Anne, that it is 100% saying that she is, yes, you have to make peace with the fact that he's not coming back. To me, that's like, it's a very Arthur Miller-y thing in a way that it's like, or American 20th century drama in general of reality versus illusion. And like, we need to break free from the delusions we're telling ourselves. So from Chris's perspective, I feel like he thinks he's doing the right thing by trying to shake Kate from that delusion. But like, I don't think he's being considerate of how this is going to destroy her, especially since he doesn't know how much she knows about all these circumstances that hide behind all of this. And then, as Amelia, you kind of brought up, all of this that I'm just like grappling with is all even before we talk about the fact that there is this blood feud between these two families, the Kellers and the Devers. And one part of me is like, oh, is this kind of sweet that this is like Capulets Montagues, this union will finally create the reconciliation? But I'm like, no. Because
you know how that play ends, right?
I do.
They survive, right?
Yeah, Friar Lawrence is there. It's fun. I just fell asleep at 20 minutes before the end. I don't know. But no. But my thinking with that is like, it's not just that, that type of, family feud doesn't end well, but it's specifically Joe uses this relationship between Chris and Anne to make things right with the Devers, or to kind of not quite, there's no noble intention behind it, but he's like, yes, our families are going to be so close. And, George, you tell your dad that when he comes out of prison, there's no hard feelings, and I've got a job for him, and I got a job for you too. And like, it's going to be great. We're all family now. And this feels just like such a minefield of how we're using this relationship to sweep away all of the bad blood that exists between these two families, and rightfully so. And it's, for this coupling to be successful would be for Joe to win and to actually get to say that there's nothing wrong with what's happening between our two families. And then there's the last kind of layer of this like crazy onion, which is, okay, so I've talked about all the characters and the lead up and all the crazy stuff that's going on. But then now that it's over, this was the last kind of like everything that's happened. What is the future of this relationship? And I just think they can't, that after everything that's happened, like, I don't think he's going to be a well-adjusted person, like after everything he knows and what he's kind of, and perhaps this is a refutation of that American drama, reality is better than illusions here, but like none of these people are, except for maybe Kate, as Amelia, you sort of pointed out, she's kind of finally had this steadfast closure here. I don't know.
It's debatable.
Yeah, I feel like we need a sequel to this play. That's like, I don't know.
And it would
well, I feel like in that moment when like Kate, at the end, when she seems so strong, it's almost like, not to bring back Steel Magnolias, but like, Lynn, who Sally Field played in the movie, she says like, women are strong. She kind of gives this monologue about how women are stronger in the face of grief than men because they have to hold everything together. And I think in so many instances we see like the matriarch of the family, right? Like having to just be it's either fight or flight, and you have to fight because nobody else will. Because you have so many men who don't understand how to deal or how to process with their emotions. And in that moment, you see that she has a better understanding of it. But
doesn't mean she's going to be psychologically okay with all of this.
I mean, who knows?
The sequel of this is like a Frances McDormand movie.
Yeah.
Like, a la Nomadland or whatever. It'll be some kind of like, and I'm just on my own and I'm going to do it. Actually, Frances McDormand would be good in this part too.
She would.
Anyway,
see that.
So that was my long-winded way of saying, I don't know, Jesus complicated. How else to answer this? Those unloading all those thoughts just felt cathartic for me to try to make sense of this. I don't know about you. Listen,
very smart.
Let it out. I mean, for me, I go, Chris and Anne, they can be together for this. Cause I mean, Anne comes into the story knowing Larry's dead. And I think Emilio said, she's made, or Ryan, one of you, either of you said, she's made her peace and she's ready to move on. Chris is doing a little bit more gymnastic work to get to where he's got to be, but he's willing to go into this relationship. They're both consenting to go into this. And I think because of how much turmoil comes from both sides of their family, that at the end, they're all each other has at this point of the story. That basically, like, Anne's basically like broken the bridge between her brother and father. Because, I mean, they say, like, she's never written to him in prison. Like, only Georgie's gone to go visit him.
But he doesn't prior to this visit now. This is his first visit.
Right, correct. And now she sent Georgie away. So clearly she's drawn a line in the sand. And I mean, yes, Joe did bad things, but Chris is just as angry at his dad for what he did too. So it's not like Chris was there selling the cracked, whatever it is, warheads, center frames, whatever piece of the plane it was that breaks. But either way, that's it. I have no idea. Something from a plane that cracks and need
engine cylinder,
engine cylinder. That's it. So it's like for the two of them, after going through such a traumatic 48, 24 hours, that I can see, because I mean, Chris says, I'm going out to the West. Like I'm going somewhere at Pennsylvania, Ohio, somewhere like that. That basically, pardon?
They're already in Ohio.
Sorry, Ohio, not Ohio. Wherever it is. Like Chris says, I've got a job somewhere. I'm leaving. I'm cutting ties with the family. And I think after this night and after his dad's death, they bury Joe, and then Anne and him leave. Like they go somewhere else and they're not coming back.
Like that can't be healthy, but sure, I guess.
It's healthy, but I mean, these are two so broken people.
Right. They have a trauma bond, I guess.
They have a trauma bond, and it's something sometimes in that situation where it's like no one else is gonna get the baggage that comes with these two people. And on top of that, it's the 50s where therapy was just starting to get explored. It wasn't what it is today where people go and talk about their emotions and try and heal. As Emilio says, back then it was bury the dead, bury your emotions and move forward. It's baby boomer era that we're heading into, right? So there's a lot of trauma that these people carry with them that never got resolved, but yet they still somehow found a way to hold on to each other and make it through. I mean, we get these baby boomer couples who are 60, 70 years married, who I'm sure have some shit in their closets that they've never dealt with. For Anne and Chris, I think for this time period, they're the only two people who get each other. Ergo,
I feel like the sequel should be Anne hooking up with Biff Loman, and they can forge a new trauma bond that's not based in some kind of shared
Arthur Miller fan fiction.
Crossover.
Yeah,
While being haunted by John Proctor.
Arthur Miller Datapalooza. Yeah, all of Arthur Miller's characters walk into a bar.
There we go.
Ryan, write that play.
Yeah, I'll get on it for some.
Yeah, I'll put it on the queue.
You got Biff, you got Kate, you got Anne and Chris, you got the Proctors.
Tituba should probably be there, just so it's
or you can just read John Proctor is the Villain by Kimberly Bellflower, an amazing adaptation.
Oh, it sounds like that's the play that you're endorsing.
Okay.
I am.
people to
I very much so am. It's an amazing play that basically tells you that Arthur Miller and John Proctor are trash. It's incredible. I highly
I've
recommend
never
it.
read this play, but now I really want to.
Awesome.
You got it. It's amazing. It's my
Okay.
favorite play of all time.
Wow.
Okay.
Nice.
I'm intrigued. Emilio,
Hey.
I'll let you start this next question, though, which is, does changing the race of the characters of Dr. Jim and his wife, Sue, add anything new or impact the story in a different way? They were
Right.
played by BIPOC actors in this production,
Yes.
which is untraditional.
Right. I guess I don't know that because in my production as well, Jim and Sue, the principal actors, were Black actors. Actually, both Black American actors, which is interesting. So for me, it's always been like, another layer in this play has to be, what does this neighborhood look like? This suburb, Jim's a doctor. So is it his money? And also the Kellers are rich. So is it just like all of these rich people living on this block, and are they the only Black family in the neighborhood? What does that have to say about how this neighborhood has come to be? What's the experience for the Black characters in this neighborhood? I think what's probably a more consequential question is, and also in our production at Stratford, the Deavers were a Black family. I find that a far more interesting
It's a better
question
choice.
about how their experiences with Dad going to jail, being the fall guy for that crime, that his white boss and partner is scot-free, and that he is serving all this time in jail for killing these men in this war. I think that's a very interesting conversation to have about the criminal justice system.
Go
but
Martha
yeah, I
Henry
mean,
for making that decision, because that's pretty good.
Sorry?
Just go Martha Henry for making that decision, because I think that's a whole different light on these characters that doesn't really exist on the page.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. And then you're also talking about an interracial couple in this year, right? You're talking about that time. And so, I'm by no means an expert on this question, but my feeling is that by introducing a multicultural suburb for the basis of this play, you have a lot of material and questions to investigate about how this neighborhood functions. And you have opportunities and choices to make about whether or not these people are harmonious, or if there are tensions based on discrimination. So, it really does feel like Jim Bayless and Frank Luby and Joe Keller are old pals who can hang out in that gazebo no matter what. We don't have many opportunities with the Bayless family to explore what if they are not as welcome as other people, given the situation of the time period of this play. That's not really in the text for us to explore. So we can explore the opposite, which is they're integrated and beloved as family in this community. There's obviously more opportunity in the Deaver story for, I believe, for non-white actors to play those parts, and for us to learn something about how easy the white people have it, particularly in suburbs, which they created to keep people of color out. That's my 4.5 cents on that, I guess.
Well said, Emilio. Well said. Grace, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's interesting. You brought up the text and the relationship with the text and casting choices. And there was one moment in the script where George it was when he first arrived, and Dr. Jim and Sue were there. And Dr. Jim's, somebody brought up the fact that Dr. Jim was living in George's old house. And George said, oh, I liked it the way it was. And I thought that was such an interesting moment, right? Because you have Dr. Jim and his wife coming into this house and into this neighborhood that is very white from the appearance of it, right? And how uncomfortable that must be. But then also to have somebody who used to live there you know, a white man telling you I liked it the way it was. That was such an interesting moment. And I wondered if there were any conversations about that moment. And I'm sure maybe there were, but I just felt like there were so many relationships in the play that we could have explored more. And like, I'm so glad that they were cast by people of color. Like if they weren't, it would just feel like if this was an all white cast, I would just be like, no, like it's 2020, like, or 2021. Like we need to like, no, this is not how it should be. And so I think it did in some ways dramaturgically track. I just wish that they explored it even more, because I thought it actually was a very interesting casting choice, but I think it affects every single relationship. And, you know, knowing that the director was a white man, I wonder if he really explored that in the way that, you know, maybe he should have, but that was just my 2 cents of it.
Yeah. Ryan?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll start my comments with, exactly what Grace said, that this is a super white play and let's get diversity in wherever we can. And I do think the Baylesses, like Jim and Sue, are an easy candidate for that. Like something like the Devers, I think, is the more interesting choice. And I think it's amazing that Martha Henry made that decision for her production. But it requires thinking through the implications of it a lot more than the Baylesses or the Lubies do. And I think it would be really, I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think it would be a little gauche to do it with the Lubies, because Frank's whole character trait is that I'm just so lucky. My birthday prevented me from getting drafted twice. I'm the luckiest man in the suburbs. And that might kind of ring a little false if they are the one black family in the neighborhood. Like, I'm the luckiest guy here, right, everyone? Like, especially if you do want to play up some of that racial tension that could exist, like in these dynamics, especially like with Frank and Lydia, like the fact that could potentially make it a whole other, like, just like the I liked it how it was type line. The fact that, oh yeah, that was the girl you wanted, and that would, if Lydia was black, that would create an interracial possibly like dynamic like the Devers would, if the Devers are also white in this case. So like I think there's stuff to play with, but I think the Baylesses are they're not very consequential characters as far as the plot goes. There is like whereas the Lubies are kind of like simpletons, for lack of a better word.
I have horoscopes.
Yeah, like the Baylesses are world-wise. They know stuff. They've seen it all before. They did not need to be told that Joe is guilty to know exactly what's been going on this whole time. And to me, yeah, making these are non-white characters, that it feels like it works to me. I would have liked to see maybe more playing with the dynamic, but they're not characters that do invite, just because they're so tangential to the plot. Like they don't invite as much to it. And if you want just like a bit of a safe way to integrate diversity into this play, they are, I think, the logical choice.
Yeah. So, okay. How do I put this? I wasn't a fan of the way this production handled this type of casting of Jim and Sue. I think it's interesting, and as Grace pointed out, that great line of Georgie's does give you some interesting choices there. But this production almost felt too modern in the way that Jim and Sue were treated by everybody else. Because in the 1950s, in this type of suburb, as Emilio pointed out, having a black family there would definitely give you some dynamic challenges. It wouldn't just be widely accepted. There would be some tension. This is the 50s. This wasn't like having that. There's many stories about a black family moving into the suburb and there being tension, which is why I think Martha Henry did her dramaturgical due diligence, and she found the better way to diversify this play, which is by making the Devers the BIPOC family.
Well, but she also did.
So were the Baylesses.
Yeah.
The Baylesses, yes. Wait. Yeah.
But it's a much more integrated neighborhood then, so it's less of singling out.
And I think we don't want to be cautious of the idea of the monolith of every suburb must have been non-integrated or not successfully integrated, where at least because as we as we know, like the purveying presence of racism on a scale of how insidious and baked into society it is. A family like that can still, thrive in this neighborhood and feel ostracized feel othered or not feel safe or whatever. We just don't get those opportunities, I think, with what the Baylesses go through in terms of plot, to be able to see much of it.
I mean, the whole conversation between Anne and Sue, I think it works well if both the Baylesses and the Deavers are Black, but when it's Sue being a Black woman doing the conversation with Anne in the 1950s felt too modern with the way she was threatening Anne. I think Sue's character is so waspish in the way she's written with that honey and that very silky, I don't want to say villainous, but like there's that patronizing attitude to it that it almost would be more scary if Sue is white saying this to a Black Anne. Like there's something even more threatening to that thing of like, don't move back here. There's something, I think there's more meat to chew if the Deavers are the only Black family on stage. But that being said, I applaud Martha Herrin for trying and doing new things and doing some and exploring that. I just always go, when you're diversifying some of these older plays, just do your dramaturgical due diligence and make sure you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it and then not doing and then not working it and exploring it properly. Because with these plays that are so time based, like this one is, like this play is very time specific, that unless you're going to modernize and do it like middle of the Iraq War in the early 2000s, what you could, I mean, I could see somebody.
I feel like they made a Tobey Maguire movie that was basically just that. I didn't see it.
They could have done that. I don't know. But like, you could do something like that where you modernize it. But this is such a time-centric piece that if you're going to diversify the cast, just do your dramaturgical due diligence. And I don't think this particular production did it as well as they should have. I didn't get to see Martha Henry's version, but I assume she did her really good dramaturgical due diligence and really helped hone the Baylesses and the Deavers and made them fit in this world really well.
Mac, mind if I ask, what do you think was not fleshed out enough or done well enough in the dynamic in this production?
I just, once again, it's suburban neighborhood. I didn't get a sense of if there was tension or if they were accepted, Dr. Jim and Sue.
Well, I think like they are clearly accepted. Like you can't say you don't get a sense. I think what you're saying is you would like to have seen more tension, and they decided that's not how they wanted to play it.
Yeah, like even in the most utopian circumstance where the Black family does move into this suburbia neighborhood and they're just accepted right away. We know from historical records. I mean, even my mother remembers living in New York in the 70s, and when a Black family moved into her suburban neighborhood, she remembers the church ladies all gossiping and talking about
and like
family.
You could watch A Raisin in the Sun or Clybourne Park more recently and get that story, but like that isn't what this play is, and it doesn't have to be. I think
no, but if you're going to do that type of casting, you got to do more than just widely accept them. There has to be like a little more. It doesn't have to be dialogue moments. It can just be some physical things. Like I remember when I watched a revival of South Pacific that was done a number of years ago at the Kennedy Center. They diversified that cast, but even within the diversifying the cast, they really worked at making sure that the undertow of the racism within the military of the Black soldiers was still present. Like, for example, the Black soldiers were the only ones carrying the dangerous ammunition boxes. They were always grouped together away from the white soldiers. Like little directorial things you can do, whether it's a look between Sally and Sue, where Kate and Sue, where maybe, I don't know if Kate fully accepts her new Black neighbors.
Well, I think she does. Like, I don't know. Well, to me, you keep framing it as like, I don't know if, no, we know if she does accept them. And you can disagree if that was the right choice, but I don't think it's a lack of choice or lack of dramaturgy on the part of the production team.
Yeah. I don't know. I just
I think it...
Yeah. Oh, no, go.
So, well, I just think it's one of those interesting conversations, right? Where it's like, I mean, this is sort of how I feel with Arthur Miller a lot of the time when theaters produce his work. It's like, there is a lack of conversation about intersectionality in his plays. It's very much about white suburbia. And so it makes you wonder, like, why this play now, right? Not to be a dramaturg, but like, why this play now, really? Like, when there are so many other plays, like, you know, we have Adrienne Kennedy, who wrote amazing works. Like, why are we not producing her work right now? You know, so it's like, when I look at a production like this, I understand that they're trying to, you know, incorporate BIPOC actors into this play. And I think that I understand the choices that they made. And I think that, you know, I mean, it really depends on the actors and how they felt about the experience. But I just sort of wish that, like, you know, instead of Arthur Miller, like, why not choose a play from this time period that includes conversations about, you know, diversity and about what that looked like during that time period.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I agree. Like, once again, dramaturgical due diligence. As long as you do that and don't just blindly start diversifying without thinking, because these plays were written in a time and a place. So if you're going to start,
most plays are.
They are, but it's the fact that, like, Arthur Miller, as Grace said, it was white suburbia that he was writing about. When this play was originally produced, the entire cast would have been white. All of Death of a Salesman cast would have been white, except for Tituba and the Crucible. That whole cast would have been white. So when you have plays and musicals that are written about, are written in that way or written in that time, you just have to be conscientious. It's kind of like the recent revival of Carousel they did, where they made Billy Bigelow a Black character. And yet he's the only character that commits domestic abuse and slaps Julie Jordan, versus why not make Enoch Snow, the successful businessman, like the Black character? Like, you have to think.
I think in these instances where there's opportunities, obviously, for diverse casting in any of the roles, if you're going to do this play and you don't want to do an all white cast, as you probably shouldn't. I think that what I'm sort of aligning a little bit with what Ryan was saying, which is sort of like, if the one Black family in this neighborhood is going to be the Baylesses, you will not have a play that has material to dive into racial tensions in the suburbs in the 50s as much as you would if you had chosen the Devers to be the Black family, or if you had chosen the Kellers to be the Black family, or if you had done an all Black production where every family, this is now a Black neighborhood going through this. The rich Black man who owns something that's like General Motors, who, you know, turns on one of his friends who's now serving the jail time for him, his son, you know, and then maybe the Deaver family. I don't know. Like, you can, there's so many opportunities here, and every choice arrives at a different set of questions that dramaturgically you would investigate. I just think that in this situation, because we're talking about the Baylesses, we might, you know, without it feeling like we're not doing our due diligence, we are actually arriving at saying, like, this is a family that fits in this world with these people. They are accepted, they're loved, they're appreciated. Jim's words really move Kate, because they've been neighbors for a long time. The friendship is solid. I don't know how long they've been there now.
They've only been there for a little while, but Jim and Chris were also overseas together.
That's right.
There's history between them. Like,
that's right. That's right. And so that's before they maybe even moved into that house. And it goes, okay, so that friendship can actually impact how they end up in that neighborhood. Right. It's the advocacy of the Kellers in the face of those, you know, church women who are going to be shitty, and we don't see them, so we don't get a chance to actually explore them.
We don't. But I mean, like, I mean, like, once again, I didn't get to see Martha Henry, but I'm sure in the rehearsal room there were conversations and that topic was discussed. I mean, there's a whole great article on the Stratford website about this production and this type of casting that she went into this. So as long as you do that, I think there's, I think I'm fully supporting this type of casting. I just don't think this particular production did enough exploration to it, but that's just my point of view of the way that they used Jim and Sue in this. Because I think the casting was great. I just think there could have been a little bit more explored, even without changing the dialogue. Just physically on stage, you could have done a little bit more in there. But overall, solid casting. Like, the actors are great. The actors who played Jim and Sue, who were, let me grab their names, Sol, Remy, and Kayla McCall, were both great. I mean, it was a great scene between Sue and Anne. That scene was terrifyingly good with the two of them. They have great chemistry. So it's just, once again, just dramaturgical due diligence. As long as you do that and you think about those questions and you do your best to answer those questions and do the work, by all means, do it. All right, last question of the night, which is one that Ryan wrote that I'm going to let him start because he's going to kick us off.
Why don't you?
I'm not throwing you under the bus. I mean, this is a great question, but you want to start this question, so I will happily let you answer it. So the play title speaks to the difference between individual versus collective responsibility. Does Larry's suicide undercut Miller's thematic message?
All right, let me explain. If like the thought process behind this question isn't obvious, like, I'm sorry.
Take it away, T.A. Ryan.
This is the thing that I like this play very much, but this is the thing that always irks me about this play, is that the lesson, the moral, they literally put it in the title, is to him, they were all my sons. And Joe Keller is supposed to learn the lesson that it's not about my son and my family and me doing everything I can to secure this like perfect, like, suburban storybook life for my family. It's, you need to think about others. You need to think about the man you sent to jail. You need to think about the pilots that you murdered. And as soon as you start thinking about that, you realize just what a bad person you've been. There's another line, I think an even more important line in the play. It's a little less poetic and thus isn't a good candidate for the title, but I think it's the best line in the play. And that's Larry never flew a P-40. And to me, this, Joe says it over and over again whenever somebody brings up like, but what if Larry had been one of those pilots? What if he was in one of those planes? And Joe has his holstered answer that Larry never flew a P-40, so he couldn't have been one of those pilots, therefore I couldn't have killed him. Then we get the big reveal at the end, and dramatically speaking, I think it's a wonderful choice, and it really like ratchets up the tension to this big climax of, wait a minute, Larry killed himself because of you, as a direct result of your actions. You killed your own son. The thing that you've been telling yourself you couldn't have done because he didn't fly a P-40, turns out you did it. And to me, that final reveal of the title line, like, well, to him, they were all my sons. To me, that rings kind of hollow in that moment, not because it's not true for Larry, but to me, in that moment, the reveal that, oh, the thing you were afraid of, you actually did, suddenly makes it not about that collective responsibility. It's not about what you've done to others. It's about what you did to you and to your own family and your own son. And at the end, Joe shoots himself not because he killed all his sons, but because he killed his one son, Larry, singular. And to me, thematically, it's a bit of a mess. Like it undercuts the point that I feel like Arthur Miller was trying to make here. It's a great moment that's so emotional and feels like, wow, we've been building to this. But to me, it feels thematically insincere to what the play is trying to say. I don't know if others have thoughts. There's my kind of where this question comes from.
Isn't it this thing about fraternity, about brotherhood in the war, like that your family is the people you fight alongside, we band of brothers, that whole thing. And so I think the realization is not just I killed Larry, but I killed 21 Larrys.
But he knew that he killed 21 Larrys.
But he didn't know. He knew that he killed 21 men. He didn't know that he killed 21 Larrys until he knew that he killed Larry. Like it doesn't save your dramaturgical question, but it does, like, it's not a sufficient answer, I don't think, but I think it's enough to be like, he suddenly saw faces to those boys rather than just this amorphous, like, oh, a butterfly flaps its wings in a tsunami across the earth, right? Like, he's not seeing his direct impact, and he's done a lot of work to bury that as, well, I don't have any guilt when it comes to that. It was just mistakes, like nickels and it's dollars and cents, nickels and dimes. They would have had my head on a pike if I didn't get those heads out, blah, 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 all that stuff. But it's not until he realizes, oh, I did kill my son indirectly. And not only did I kill him, but I killed all of them, and they were all my son. So yeah, I understand you're like, maybe the play could be called, what could it be called? All My Son? But,
like, yeah, I get what you're
my
saying.
son?
I think P40.
Never flew a P40 yet.
Well, yeah, it's not a great title, but I think
The P40, not as great as All My Son.
No. Like, I get what you're saying.
cylinder.
I think what you're doing here is more of an actor choice that whoever's playing Joe should make for themselves to try to fix the thematic hole that I've diagnosed here. I don't feel like the play feels the way you're feeling about it, or at least as you're justifying it. An actor can do that, and like a good actor should do that, so it doesn't feel like, oh
but,
man,
you know,
it
becomes inescapable for him. That's why he has to kill himself. Like, I don't think he was sitting there waiting, you know, like, oh, if I find out that I actually did kill Larry, I've got a bullet upstairs waiting for me. I think it's that in the moment he hears that, and it just it snaps a string, like it just like breaks a heartstring that cannot get back together, and he knows his life is over. He might honestly. Okay, so again, from actor perspective, because
sure.
I am an actor.
I'm not an actor, so yeah, please give me
from actor perspective as an actor, how I come at things. It would be very interesting if he goes, I'm going to go get my coat. And it's not until he's inside getting his coat that he sees the gun box on top of the shelf. Like, that maybe he does think I am going to turn myself in. Like, I don't know that suicide comes to him. And it's also very interesting for us as audiences to see him and go, oh shit, that guy's going to kill himself. Whatever that is. Like, that's an opportunity. And those are all just interpretive opportunities. But I think what has always got me about the title and about that line is that he recognizes those were people's sons instead of just men in war. Men die in war. Mm-hmm. And if you're in war, you're going to have to deal with that. Men die in war. That's just what you deal with. When your son dies in war, that really sucks, and you go through that pain. Mm-hmm. But men die in war. He gave up his life for a good cause. Okay, you killed your son. That's awful. You also killed 21 other people's sons who he thought were his brothers. Like, you killed 21 of your sons.
Me, like, I hear everything you're saying, and I agree. Like, this is all great stuff, and it feels like it should be there. But it also, to me,
it isn't.
It's not that it isn't. It's that that's somebody's daughter argument. It's like, why isn't it enough that it's just someone? Why isn't it, like, why does it have to, like, to me, it doesn't teach the lesson of that collective responsibility if he needs to anchor it in his individual responsibility to learn that lesson.
I mean, who's learning lessons in this play instead of killing themselves? Like, like, I don't think it's a lesson he's learning. He's escaping his guilt.
Well, I think it's interesting to look at, like, sorry to interrupt, but I think it's interesting to look at, like, what does my son even mean, right, in the context of this play? Because it's like very dramaturgical thing for me to say, but like, in terms of, you know, at the end when Joe looks around and he sees his other son Chris just in complete disarray, and then he finds out that, you know, and he really does face the fact that his other son, Larry, has killed himself because of, you know, actions that he was a part, right? So it's like, you see, like, from his perspective, it's like, not only did I, you know, take part in the death of my son, Larry, but emotionally and like psychologically, did I kill my other son as well? And what does that do for their futures, and specifically for Chris's future? So that the title made me wonder, like, what that means for their relationship. And also just the fact that, like, when at the end, when he does kill himself, it's like, okay, now both of your sons are, you know, one of your sons is dead. Your other son is, like, you know, like, I don't know how you move past that. You know, it's like, it's such a horrible thing to go through. So I think it's interesting, right? It's like, you've also got these other sons of war, but you've also got this whole family with tears in their eyes surrounding you, and you realize that you were part of the cause of this whole situation. Mm-hmm. And how do you come to terms with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sons. Like when you look at war killing young men and generations of gaps of, like just people missing, gone, sacrificed to this act of violence and hate and misguided, whatever. Like, I know this is the Second World War, so it's like the Great War, where we defeated fascism. Not really.
Yeah, I would say not really.
It never went away. Yeah. And people die for those kinds of things. I really think he managed to, out of a survivalist tactic to get out of jail, he managed to convince himself he didn't kill people, that it was just casualties of war, because that's what war is. It wasn't like, I didn't actually go and put a bullet in those boys' heads.
Yeah.
But he did go put a bullet in his son's head.
Yeah.
And it contextualizes the other deaths. Suddenly.
Well, yeah. I mean, Joe justifies his actions by going, it was the war machine. They were wanting parts and I gave them parts. They were numbers on my spreadsheet. And I mean, one of the things I think Miller points out, or at least the way I read this play, was the whole concept of behind the fallacy of the collective responsibility of all my sons is the individual self-interest. I mean, we all love to say we are the collective good. We are all here for the common good, but it's like behind a lot of reasons people for being there on part of that mob is self-interest. Joe's self-interest is making money from the company for my family. Like there's the whole thing of the undercutting of what I think Miller, at least what I read from Miller's thing, was the whole fallacy of the all my sons. It's like, we are all suffering, we are all my sons here, but it's like, really? Hold on a minute here. Both deaths are self-deaths. They're not they're not part of the collective. They're individuals. It's an individual act, not a group act. So part of me almost goes, is Miller pointing out, I don't know Miller's mind, but is Miller pointing out the fallacy of the whole concept of the all my sons concept, the collective versus the
I think if he was trying
of the individual.
I think if he was trying to point out that that's a fallacy, then it would have been a line that was said earlier that is then said again at the end in new light, and we realized we didn't even realize what we were saying.
Right.
But the fact that
you do say it at the beginning because it's the title.
Okay, it's a title, but it's not like
you don't need to do it twice because once is already the title.
Yeah.
You read that program when you walk in the door.
Yes, the audience is familiar with the line, but the line devoid of context kind of means nothing. It's three sort of words stitched together as all my sons, and you think, oh, that could just refer to Chris and Larry are his two sons. Like it's hearing the line in the context in which it's spoken is what gives it this meaning.
I guess they were all my sons.
Mm-hmm. And if he had said it a different way at the beginning, kind of maybe glibly and then sincerely at the end, that could kind of like maybe have meant something different, but I don't know.
That's true.
For me, I just kind of go there. There's a little bit of an undertow here of behind the collective good. There's always, because as human beings, we are Darwin's theory of survival, right? It's behind the collective. Yeah, but it's the whole thing of, as a mob, there's a lot of reasons why people end up being in the mob for the collective good. It's not just we are all here for the same cause. There's often
that's why I'm in the mob.
Right?
I'm in the mob for the collective good. That's what I've always said.
Yeah, right, but even behind that, there's always some individual motivation to go and do something like that. There's always an individual motivation to do what you do. As much as we all love to say the collective good, there's always there's always something.
Heisenberg, right? Heisenberg is like, I just need $50,000.
Yeah.
Oh, I can get $400,000 really easily. How about an empire of 300 million?
But yeah, I mean, like, Ryan, this is a very good, very difficult question because you're right. Miller's theme is a bit of a hot mess. It's not as succinct as, say, maybe The Crucible, where The Crucible's whole message is the dangers of mob mentality and what that can lead to.
Well, even The Crucible,
I think The Crucible is just like, we hate women, but well, to each their own.
Well, but I would even say, like, even without going so like simplified the we hate women route, but like The Crucible also, and I think I mentioned this when we did our Death of a Salesman panel, The Crucible also kind of muddies up its themes a little bit, where it just takes this, like, the communities run amok, and then the whole second act is all about the personal tarnishing of this one man's legacy, and it's not even about the stuff that we started with. Like,
Well, and
so-
dramaturgically does not track at all.
no, it's
At
not.
all.
It's two separate plays, kind of both set among the witch
Abigail
trials.
was
It's basically
it's like
falsettos.
hot mess.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Either way, there we go, everybody. You let us know what you think the title "All My
Get in
Sons
the
and the
comments.
Themes" mean. Comment below. Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear. But until then, everybody, we thank you so much for tuning in. But before we go, let's let everybody know where we can find each other. So, Grace, you mentioned you had a TikTok. Is there other places people can find and follow you and all your wonderful
Yes.
in LA?
Yeah, so I post play recommendations and a lot of straight play references on my TikTok, not Kristen Bell. I'm also gonna be posting something on YouTube in the next month. We'll see. I'm working on something, and my YouTube is not Kristen Bell. And then on Instagram and Twitter, Grace Walker, 3 R's at the end. I'm very entertaining, so please follow me. And also very humble. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Love it, love it. Amelia, where can people find and follow you and all your wonderful things? Like for example, the February love story.
That's right. So actually, yeah, new developments. I wrote a play film this year. Was supposed to be a play, ended up having to be a movie to survive restrictions in Ontario. About dating from 6 feet apart. It's called February, a Love Story.
you were interviewed about it on this very show.
That's
several years
right.
ago.
That's right.
Link
Look
in
up
the
top
corner
here,
or
there's
whatever.
that
Folks in the
thing.
cup
Whatever.
will
Pop
remember
in.
that. And I believe we chatted with Jill back when it was still a play and not a movie.
Yeah. Correct.
So it later had to become a movie to survive. We have just updated our website so that you can pay for play if you would like to watch it. Up until then, it had been only for limited release with certain other avenues. And so now it is available to watch at any time, your pleasure, if you will.
It was really good. I would highly recommend it.
At
As well.
Amazing.
www.februarytheplay.com.
Love that.
Tugged at my heartstrings.
And where can people find and follow you personally, Amelia? Do you want people find and following you personally?
Sure. I'm at Emilio Vieira, my name, on Instagram, which is sort of the social media I use the most, I guess. And stay tuned for stuff. The world is reopening. Artists are getting back together and figuring out how to reconnect. So I look forward to following what everyone's up to as we look to get back into in-person live theater someday.
And Emilio, you also can be found in several of the Stratford Pro shots that we reviewed. So you were part of the Mackers
That's right.
Scottish play production. You also, I believe you were in The Tempest with Martha Henry.
That's right.
Yeah,
And Coriolanus.
And Coriolanus. And were
Those
you
are
in
the
Timon?
threes I did. I was not in Timon, no.
Oh.
Those are the 3 films that I did while I was there. Tempest, Macker's Tempest, and Coriolanus.
Perfect. So check those out too, everybody.
Sure.
And Ryan, give us your classic Ryan Borochovitz send-off.
Not a classic. I'm not active on social media, so don't bother trying to find me. I have a Twitter account that I set up years ago and have literally not logged into once since then. So follow that, see if you can make that famous. But no, I have Facebook too, but don't want friend requests from strangers. So if I don't know you, you don't send me a friend request. So yeah, just send all that love to Cup of Hemlock Theatre. Hey, it's the show you're watching right now, and literally everything I post on Facebook is just me sharing these episodes when they come out anyway, so you're not missing much.
Perfect. Wonderful. And you can find and follow me at Mackenzie Horner on all social media platforms. As of this recording, we will have we will be just about
Who's
to
we in
announce
this context?
myself and Autumn.
Royal.
Yeah, you haven't
Royal,
mentioned that yet.
Royal. We.
Yes. Well,
Yeah,
yes. For my other
You have another
project,
podcast.
Yes, my other podcast before the Downbeat a Musical podcast. My co-host Autumn and I will be just about to announce what our season 4 first episode will be. And let's just say it's a very green episode. So that is the hint there. But you can tune in and listen to that. You can listen to all of season 3, season 2, season 1. We even just did a live movie musical commentary. But you can tune in and all that good stuff. Just keep tuned for more fun stuff from Cup of Hemlock, such as See You with Shorts. We got a mini series that we have recorded. But either way, there we go, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you all next time with another great review. Until then, everybody stay healthy, stay safe. Bye.